Now then, Vinyl Monkey here again. M, the letter M. Yeah, bit of a problem this one. I've got an absolutely disproportionate amount of albums under the letter M behind me. I don't know whether that's entirely coincidental or whether that's reflective of the dominance of the letter M in rock and popular music or what. But anyway, just a flavour of some of them really behind me, you know, that I'm not going to show really and talk about today. You know, the West Coast Cool of Jerry Mulligan, the absolutely stupendous saxophone of Hank Mobley. This is under the jazz section. Charlie Mingus, an absolute giant. I mean, brilliant composer and bassist. Jackie McLean, the trumpeter. Sorry, the alto sax player, Jackie McLean, sorry. I'm thinking of Lee Morgan, the trumpeter. Jackie McLean, yeah. Wynton Marsalis, the trumpeter. Wynton Marsalis. This is a beautiful album. Herbie Mann, he's a jazz flautist, flute player. Brilliant. One of the greatest hard bop albums of all time, possibly, The Sidewinder, by the trumpeter Lee Morgan. And then, if you're going to listen to one jazz album of these I'm flying through, maybe try one by Thelonious Monk, the jazz pianist. Absolutely beautiful stuff. This is a great album. This is Monk's Dream, where he plays with a quartet with bass, drums and a sax player. But absolutely beautiful. So maybe give that one a try. But I'm not going to talk about any of those jazz albums, or even these soul albums, the beautiful Philadelphia Soul of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. The disco, the smooth disco of George McRae, Rock Your Baby. And then an absolute giant of popular music and soul, and one of those people like Marvin Gaye and Isaac Hayes who took soul into new territory, Curtis Mayfield. Absolutely brilliant. And then there's reggae, and perhaps one of the greatest albums of all time and one of the greatest performers and songwriters of all time, Bob Marley. Not even going to talk about him. Or the folk people in here under M behind me, Christy Moore, the incomparable Joni Mitchell, and I've got the Blue album there as well. Don McLean, and then the absolutely superbly talented guitarist and singer John Martin. So not going to talk about any of them, or even the rock sort of people behind me. I mean, my least favourite solo Beatle, Paul McCartney. The Welsh 70s rockers, Man. Perhaps not brilliant albums that they made, but great memories. I've seen them a couple of times in the 70s and they were absolutely brilliant concerts. They blew your head off, did Man. Great stuff. And then the current Welsh rockers, the Manic Street Preachers, one of my favourite current bands. And then those 60s progsters, the Moody Blues. I'm not going to talk about them either. And then behind me there's actually 41 albums under the letter M by one artist. There'll be 42 next week when I get his new album, but they include, perhaps in my opinion, one of the very, very best albums ever produced, and that's Van Morrison, of course, and this one's Astral Weeks. But I've got 41 of them behind me there. I'm not going to talk about them either. So what am I going to talk about under the letter M? Well, in the spirit of this sort of series, try and get into some of the nether regions, as I've called them, and maybe talk about some you'll be less familiar with or have forgotten about. And I want to start with 1971, and this is the American band Mountain, Nantucket Sleigh Ride. Great cover, designed by the bass player Felix Pappalardi's girlfriend. But great cover there, and there's a picture of the whale. Nantucket Sleigh Ride obviously being her, when a whale takes off, a harpooned whale takes off towing a boat behind it. And yeah, Mountain, yeah, Leslie West, the guitarist and main singer, Felix Pappalardi on bass, Corky Lang on drums, Steve Knight on keyboards. This is a really good album. They were often compared to Cream, although I think they're quite different, a bit softer. I think they're perhaps dated a little bit better than Cream has. But the title track off here, Nantucket Sleigh Ride, was used as, or part of it was used as the theme tune for, I think it was ITV's Weekend World back in the 70s and 80s. Great tune. So yeah, maybe give this one a try. One of the reasons I picked it out is nostalgia, because in the 70s we all used to argue in the playground, early 70s, you know, who's the best guitarist. It was like arguing over who's the best centre forward or who's the best lead guitarist, and everyone would go for either Hendrix or Jimmy Page or maybe even Ritchie Blackmore. And a lot of people for Eric Clapton, obviously, and so I always like to try and be contrary and pick someone, and I used to defend to the hilt that or argue to the hilt, sorry, that Leslie West of Mountain was the greatest guitarist, and I'm not sure I was right really, but what is a great guitarist? But anyway, they were a canny rock band. It's still very listenable. That's Mountain, 1971, Nantucket Sleigh Ride. The second one I'm going to talk about is 1982. I'll take it out of its plastic cover. And this is a band called Moving Hearts, Dark End of the Street. And Moving Hearts were a group of absolutely top Irish, generally folk musicians, led by Christy Moore and Donald Lunny from the band Planksty and Davy Spillane from the band Horselips, alongside people like Declan Sinnott, a fantastic guitarist, a bit of a who's who of Irish folk rock music at the time. Got together to form this project Moving Hearts, which resulted in just 2 albums. This is one of them, and what they wanted to do was to match overtly political lyrics to a more contemporary sound, and the political lyrics are just about all about the injustices in Northern Ireland, just up the road from where these guys were living at the moment, and on their island of Ireland as they're seeing it. And great photo on the back cover of the band there, and you can see Christy Moore, who wrote most of the songs, I think all but one of the songs on this album. You can almost see the anger in his face there. It's palpable, the anger at the injustices that they're singing about. And this band actually formed themselves as a workers' cooperative, so I think there were 7 members of the band, 3 roadies, a driver or 2, a manager, and they formed as a workers' cooperative, so between the sort of 12 or 13 of them in total, they shared all the income, and presumably all of the losses as well, but they, you know, despite the fact that Christy Moore wrote the vast majority of the lyrics and music, they operated in that way. So yeah, great album, and obviously featuring the absolutely wonderful voice of Christy Moore. So that's Moving Hearts, Dark End of the Street, 1982. Next up, and in a similar vein in terms of left-wing politics, are the Mekons. The Mekons were formed around the same time really as Moving Hearts, late 70s, early 80s, and they formed as a collective as well, and they operated on similar principles, and their targets weren't so much the injustices in Northern Ireland, it was more Thatcher, Reagan, miners' strike, you know, those sort of 80s political issues. And I'm holding up 2 albums here. This one is So Good It Hurts, and that's from 1988, and then the following year this album, Rock and Roll, and I just couldn't make up my mind. I mean, they produced about 8 or 9 brilliant albums in the 80s, the Mekons, and their styles ranged all over the place: folk, country, reggae, punk. You know, they were, and they employed most of those styles across single albums, certainly on this one, So Good It Hurts. But they all had that Mekons sound, and it was slightly anarchic. Great vocals, particularly by John Langford and Sally Timms, but they shared out a lot of the roles and a lot of the instruments, and allegedly that collective spirit, as I say, it extended to sharing out which instruments you played, whether or not you were competent at playing them or not, I think, in the early albums. But the musicianship on these is great, and I picked this up. They're all great albums, these. Great songs, some beautiful songs. Ghosts of American Astronauts is really good on this one. I really like that one. I seen these in the Borderline in London, a little club in London in 2002, and that's down in, I think it's down in my top 10 gigs I've ever been to. Although I've got about 48 different nights, I think, in my top 10 gigs at the moment, so I need to do a bit of editing on that. But these are the Mekons from the late 80s, So Good It Hurts and Rock and Roll. Then moving into the, moving further up to date, this is Stephen Malkmus and his band the Gixx, and this is Sparkle Hard. And Stephen Malkmus was the founder, lead singer, songwriter, guitarist with the band, the American indie band Pavement, who sort of pioneered indie rock music in America in the early 90s. And this is the album Sparkle Hard from 2018. And like the music with Pavement, I think Stephen Malkmus, whatever project he's involved with, he's often described as the music and lyrics being sharp, oblique, angular, cryptic, witty, and this is all of those things. And the songs, they maybe don't sort of smack you in the face straight away, you're not humming them within seconds, but for me, Stephen Malkmus songs, they do worm their way into you, and they stay in your head for ages, and they're just really, really worth listening to. I think he's been involved with about 18, 19, maybe 20 albums since the early 90s when he formed Pavement. I've heard probably 3/4 of them, and I've never heard a bad album by Stephen Malkmus. This one's cool, it's sophisticated, it's a little bit reminiscent in some ways of the band, the post-punk band Television, that were out in the late 70s, early 80s, but this is a real good one. This is Stephen Malkmus and the Gixx from 2018, Sparkle Hard. And then lastly, and coming right up to date, this one's a bit different. This is Becca Mancari, and this is The Greatest Part, Becca Mancari's second album. She's young, she's from New York, although now based in Nashville. And this is a lovely album to listen to. It's one of those albums where you've got the juxtaposition of really sad lyrics alongside a sort of feel-good sounding music accompanying those sad lyrics, and I think that really, really works on this album. The band are great, particularly the guitar. There's a sort of real fuzzy guitar sound that's dominant throughout it, and some real punchy driving percussion as well. I particularly like the songs Stay With Me, I think it's called, and then the song First Time, which I think is the second track on this. And that song, like a few of these songs, are about the challenges that Becca Mancari had growing up gay in a fundamentalist Christian family in America, and so some sad stuff and some very personal stuff, but set to some really, really good music. And it's only her second album, so we'll see where she goes, but definitely worth a listen. Becca Mancari, The Greatest Part. So that's the letter M. I think it'll be more straightforward here on in. I don't think I've got quite that sort of range of music in some of the forthcoming letters, so I hope you might join me for them. Alright, cheers.